Very good morning to you.
What's happening?
Not much.
You've never been to a Six Nations game?
Yeah, we had this conversation earlier in the week, but I wanted to have it again because somebody out there might have tickets for me.
Literally, Eoin said, yeah, let's do it again because somebody might want me to go with them to the game.
Somebody might feel sorry for me. Plenty of people feel sorry for me all the time, but they might feel sorry for me in a specific way.
Would you be open to any randomer saying, I've got one spare ticket, come to the game with me? Is that...
Well, I'd need to do a background check, get a few detectives on the case, and if it comes back all clear, then absolutely.
Tight window for that, that's all I'm thinking, you know.
Well, my detectives are quick operators.
And so why have you never been to a Six Nations game before?
Dunno, I guess I'm not part of a rugby club.
I'm also not part of it. I mean, to be fair, I suppose I've worked at a bunch of them, but I'm just surprised that at some point or another the curiosity wouldn't have got the better of you.
The curiosity's always been there. I've been to plenty of November international games. Those tickets are generally easier to get though, aren't they?
More genuine people probably is what you'd say. It's more like the November internationals because, I mean, people who regular viewers will be aware that you are a very regular attendee, sometimes working and sometimes just, you know, going along to watch the game, at league games to follow Kerry around the country. So that's probably the equivalent, is it, the November internationals?
Yeah, definitely.
Or genuine, sort of.
Definitely, I would definitely consider myself more genuine than anybody else. Yeah, let's go along with that. But that's the point exactly. It's like if you're a member of a rugby club and you contribute to grassroots rugby in Ireland, you absolutely should be heading along to the Six Nations games, and those should be the people that get first priority. So I've never once decided, you know what, I'm going to stand in front of them in the queue for this game. I will know my place and watch the game in my own house.
Screw that. And like, I mean, because, you know, there's also the Valentine's weekend in Rome, sort of comes around every couple of years. There's just, I mean, what I'm saying is there are social reasons to attend these games.
Have you done Valentine's weekend in Rome?
Paddy's weekend in England used to be a thing. Obviously not this time around.
Big National League weekend. Sorry, Ireland rugby.
You'd always be involved around the business end as well, of course, is the reality. I have done Valentine's weekend in Rome several times for the rugby. Several times.
And has that been a successful venture for you?
Well, I've been working over there on my own, so does that count as success?
Well, you know, everybody loves their own company.
That's true. That's true.
Do they? It was as romantic as it could possibly be, I'd imagine.
Yeah. So, right, well, look, if you're out there and you've got a spare ticket for the England game this weekend, would you take any game that's upcoming over the next while? Does it have to be England? Yeah,
well, I'd go to Murrayfield if there was plane tickets.
Oh, willing to travel as well,
yeah,
right?
willing to travel. This is a big commitment right here.
Wow.
So I'm nailing my colours to the Six Nations Mass this morning.
You could also do the other thing, which is either go and try and buy some tickets or just get some tickets, given you're sort of such a high-profile member of the media that... This wouldn't be... What I'm saying to you is the only route to you going to a Six Nations game doesn't have to be in the company of somebody you don't know.
No, yes it does. Yes it does. Let's keep the narrative going here, Adrian. I'm not buying Six Nations tickets.
Monster weekend of sport ahead, including and maybe chief amongst them, the Ireland-England game tomorrow at the Aviva, and we're going to be chatting about that in much more detail a little bit later on. Huge weekend of GA as well. Who've Kerry got this weekend on?
They're away to Cavan.
Away to Cavan.
Park.
Reading Kieran Donaghy in his column in the Star this morning, it's a long trip was the first point that he made in his piece today. You've been up there a few times, have you? He said Fermanagh was the last time he would have played against Kerry in Cavan, oddly.
Wow, really? That's an interesting one. Like I can't. The last time Kerry were up there was 2 years ago, but I don't think Donaghy was playing at that time, so a different thing. I always say that the fans who actually travel up from Kerry to those games are far more genuine Kerry fans than I am. Like, I'm literally just going an hour and a half up the road from Dublin. So I don't have
any choice on. There's no point in self-flagellating about it. Like it's.
Well, no, I'm not self-flagellating.
What you could do is go down to Tralee, you know, put in an appearance, clock in the passport, and then say I'm going to be more genuine now by heading up to Cavan from here as opposed to going from Dublin.
You could do that. You absolutely could do that. I guess I have no option, but I am just stating that, you know, there are far more fans who are far more dedicated than I am to the cause.
But you're not lacking in genuineness just because you're not. Your journey is shorter.
Some might say I am. Some pedantic people might say I am. What were you saying? Oh yeah, last time they were up there was against Fermanagh in Cavan. I wasn't at that game, so you know, there's another black mark against how genuine I am.
Yeah. Westmeath Carlow, obviously the big. I know a lot of people will be keeping an eye on that this weekend.
100% records on the line.
Yeah. And Westmeath going for three wins in a row.
Westmeath had an unbelievable turnaround last week. They were down 11 points to 3 and ended up winning the game.
8 points down with 25 minutes to go. And also Offaly had I think the keeper had a 40 with the last kick of the game, I think, something like that, and missed it. So,
I know it's not possible with a lack of actual technology to do it, but you would love to be able to watch all those Division 2 and 3 games on demand whenever you wanted to, because for a county like Westmeath, and despite what they did in Leinster last year for a county like Carlow as well, this is the big part of their year.
There's a huge mark to be served there with, whatever about live coverage of the games, because in some ways you kind of expect that maybe you're not quite going to get that, but even some sort of significant highlights package that half the country aren't being served, essentially. Division 3 and 4, as far as I understand, you don't see any of those games anywhere.
No,
appearing at any point.
The thing is, with the Super 8s and all that, we get plenty of the big counties during the summer. That really, if Westmeath are on television at some point at the start of the year, you're like, who's this player, who's that player? I literally haven't seen them play. And you can read all the articles you want to and try and do as much reading as possible, but nothing actually beats sitting down and actually watching the game in full. I know, as I say, the technology probably isn't there. There's only so many television vans that can get to games and stuff.
Yeah.
But
it doesn't have to be full-on broadcast. True. I know you have to have some sort of a presence there, but like as a public service remit, you would think that actually not serving half of the country is not a great thing. People will say, get up off your arse and go to the game. I totally get that. I absolutely understand that, and it's fully my intention that at some point or another that I would get to some of the Westmeath games coming over the course of the year. So.
Well, keep us updated on all of that. Were you watching...
Super Bowl, by the way, we need to mention Super Bowl.
Yeah, we'll get to that a little bit later on. Were you following the transfer deadline day last night?
A little bit.
Transfer deadline night?
Yeah, a little bit.
Didn't make it to Jim White for the first time in a long time. I usually do, but it's really sort of...
He's omnipresent, though, you see, as well as the thing now. He's not just
on radio as well as television. Yeah. So you could have got your fix going home on the radio and TalkSport yesterday as well. It's very hard to pick out a highlight from yesterday, but if I had to be pushed for a highlight from transfer deadline day yesterday, it was Abu Bakar Kamara, who left Fulham and he joined Turkish club Yeni Malatyaspor, if I've got that right. And he looks relatively happy. The Yeni board look unhappy completely. They look absolutely distraught at the idea that they've signed Abu Bakar Kamara from Fulham. Got us thinking about all those other times, the iconic moments that we've seen footballers and indeed other people really unhappy with a deadline day signing, or indeed an earlier signing. Emmanuel Frimpong joining Barnsley is one of the more famous examples. Here he is looking particularly chuffed that he's joined them. Christoph Samba, when he joined Panathinaikos a while back, gave us this photo. Chuffed to join the Greek powerhouse. And then Andros Townsend here has got that Spursy feeling after joining Tottenham. And then one of my most favourite is Kolo Toure revealing he's a Rangers fan when he joined Celtic a couple of years back. That is pretty much as far as you can go in terms of anything that you could glean from yesterday. Just a miserable photo of everybody around Kamara after he left Fulham. Unfortunately, it's a thing of the past, the glory of transfer deadline day.
Kolo Toure, particularly, who's a guy obviously who's full of joie de vivre generally. Like you rarely see him sort of laughing and smiling about something or other.
Well, exactly. The conspiracy theory right there that he was a Rangers fan.
Yeah, there we go. Right, get your comments coming into us. Here's what's coming up between now and about 9:30. It's going to be the sports pages very shortly. We'll let you know what's making the back page headlines. Phil Thompson. Is it a debut for Phil Thompson? I think it might be.
Yes.
On OTB AM. That's coming your way. Obviously, just a massive week, really, for Liverpool, and potentially a massive couple of months ahead. So we are really interested to get the thoughts of Phil Thompson. That's coming your way just after about 8:10, thereabouts. It's a big weekend at GEA as well, so we're going to run you through the highlights of that at about 8:25. Darren's going to be in the studio for all the sports news this morning just after 8:30, and then we're going to have Alan Quinlan, as always on a Friday, but this morning we're going to be joined by Mike Tyndall, because it's such a massive weekend of Ireland versus England. Mike Tyndall is a pretty interesting voice in the area. He's a guy who played, by my research last night, 7 times against Ireland, and has a bit of a mixed record. So we're going to speak to him to preview that game, and that is all coming your way at about 9:15. So that's what's upcoming. As I said, do keep your comments coming into us on the hashtag if you're on YouTube, Facebook. Anything reasonable, we'll pretty much guarantee that we'll bring our viewers' ways. So do keep your comments coming into us. We're going to take a quick look, however, to begin things with the newspapers this morning, and we're going to kick off with the Irish Independent today, which is all about the rugby, as most of these newspapers are this morning. Jones, pressure is on Ireland. Eddie Jones, I think the mind game started probably about 2 weeks ago when he was talking about playing 9 forwards, and he was going to play Jack Noel as a number 7. Pressure is on Ireland, he says, and look, maybe he's right. That's the Rugby England boss fears Murray's aerial bombardment, but he's confident that his side can beat what he calls the best team in the world. Tony Kelly hit with a one-match ban in a test case. Writes Colin Keys here. This is the questionable, certainly debatable red card that he picked up, Tony Kelly, last weekend for that challenge with Patrick Maher. And Colin Keys is writing that it's a bit of a test case, that referees have been instructed to take action when it comes to any head-high challenges, so that actually it removes almost any debate from the equation. There was contact made with the head, letter of the law, that's a red card, and letter of the law, it's a one-match ban.
I'd be very interested to see how this develops over the course of the league if we start to see more red cards like Tony Kelly's. I think fair enough if there's a level of consistency about it, that even if it's not deliberate, which Tony Kelly's clearly wasn't, if it's not deliberate but it still poses a danger to the opposition, if they continue to be met with harsh punishment like it was last Saturday night, I'd be very interested to see how a number of people react. Like you look at Derek McGrath and Anthony Daly on League Sunday last Sunday, in particular Anthony Daly, very, very unhappy with the Tony Kelly sending off, despite the fact that there is an argument to be made that even though it wasn't deliberate, he wasn't careful with his opponent. Now, the thing is, it's not like rugby where you kind of engage yourself into a tackle and there's a sort of uniformity to it. And, like, say, for example, the Danny Cipriani red card at Thomond Park a couple of months ago, there was a clear argument to be made that it wasn't deliberate, but he's putting the opposition in a bit of danger with the way he set his body up. Now, with the Tony Kelly situation, he's also putting his opponent in a bit of danger, but there's far less uniformity to the way you tackle in hurling. Far less than rugby anyway, so it's very hard to actually sort of create a culture where you can be tough and safe at the same time.
Is it possible to introduce a similar sort of a legislation to hurling where you would say you have, because suddenly that brings a bit of clarity to it. If you're saying to, in that instance, and actually the Tony Kelly case, Colin Keys is describing here as a test case, in that the idea of not challenging the head is going to be a thing. But if you were to introduce the idea of that responsibility to the opponent, actually suddenly that brings a bit of clarity to that Tony Kelly instance, and suddenly you don't have Anthony Daly being, and I didn't see it, incensed on League Sunday last weekend, because everybody then...
I don't want to say he was incensed.
Angry about it, whatever it was, that he certainly disagreed with it by the sounds of things. So suddenly nobody challenges the idea that actually he's made contact with the head, and it doesn't matter about, it might have been sort of half right or half wrong, or maybe it was a little bit harsh. It just happened, and he has a responsibility to his opponent. In some ways, maybe some clarity around the language of it would help people understand this a little bit better. Potentially.
Well, the thing is, within the rules already, you're not allowed to shoulder a man when he's going down for the ball, for example. So that automatically takes away a good possibility of making shoulder connection to the head, like they've obviously clamped down so much on in rugby. It's those face-to-face contacts. If a man is running right at you and you go for the shoulder, but he stays, like, if he has his body open towards you and it's not shoulder to shoulder, that could lead to a lot of damage without being deliberately violent towards your opponent. So I think that's the very thin line there. As I say, it'll be very interesting to see if the hurling referees continue to clamp down on it like this, because it's, I don't want to say it's a quicker sport than rugby when two players are running at full speed, but it's certainly quicker and it's certainly a lot less predictable.
It's probably, I wouldn't say it is, but the obvious thing is that they've got to all intents and purposes, a fairly significant weapon in their hands that, you know, even if it's not intended to use it in the wrong way, it obviously can do damage. But yeah, I think the responsibility to the opponent actually from a rugby context is something that might work in hurling, because it just clears things up and it actually covers a multitude, and it means that there's no great debate about it afterwards that, well, I didn't quite mean to do it. Actually, the responsibility is on you.
Yeah. We'll see. I just can also see there being a bit of not just a bit of a backlash, a big backlash to this.
To use that language coming from rugby into hurling, I think straight off the bat is going to be an
Brace
issue,
yourselves.
isn't it? The Irish Examiner this morning again leads with the rugby all fired up is the headline here. Praise can make you weak, warns Eddie Jones, but Ronan O'Gara believes that Ireland are just a better team. Roger's piece this morning asked by his editor on to write a piece, make a case, urged the email from the sports editor, that it's a good thing in the long run to lose the Six Nations opener at home to England this weekend. Can't make that case, says Rog. I responded, it'll be a very short column. He replied, but see how Exeter came to Thomond Park, almost did a number on Munster. Won't that serve Van Graham well? And Rog says, look, he almost has a point, but actually there's no upside to losing to England this weekend, and almost, I suppose you could say, there's no upside really in a World Cup context to losing any of these games.
Yeah,
Six Nations.
And I totally agree. Munster will have been far improved by that Exeter game, but they won that extra game. So the improvement comes from the fact that they were in a tough situation and managed to eke out a win. All things, if you could have the ideal situation, every single game is an extremely tight and tough affair from an Irish perspective, but they win every game. But you can't have that decision. That's not a decision you can go into any game and say, we're going to win in a very tight manner. You go out and you try and slaughter your opponent as much as you can. So I just think the notion that Joe Schmidt is potentially thinking that losing any of these games is a better thing than winning these games.
No, he definitely won't be thinking that. It'll be a hindsight thing where you go, but us slaughtering all of our opponents during the Six Nations, I think would be a fantastic thing for Ireland.
Well, it's also not going to happen.
We might slaughter a few of them. But yeah, because there's the traditional Irish thing of, well, we don't really want to slaughter them all because then the knives will be out first and they'll want to chop the head off as poppies or whatever. I actually think that us going out there and slaughtering the hell out of every comer that comes between now and the Rugby World Cup. And by the way, like tomorrow's game is, I was going to say arguably, but probably inarguably our biggest game before the Rugby World Cup as well. So if we were to lose that, you almost can't regain that at any point because there won't be any bigger games before the Rugby World Cup.
I think Murrayfield is absolutely huge, given they are the only opponents that were guaranteed to play again this autumn. And the trends that they've been on recently, that if they beat us in Murrayfield, that Scotland game suddenly becomes a far more talked about prospect in the lead up to what has become a cemented top seed place from our World Cup pool. Yeah. And that becomes far more of a discussion if we lose. But anyway, we're getting ahead of the England game. Yeah. I think if we're going to slaughter someone, I think tomorrow we've got every chance of doing so.
I fancy us doing a number on Scotland in Murrayfield, by the way. Shoving their haggises up their hoops.
Oh, I can hear that clip being played next Monday week after we lose in Murrayfield.
The Irish Daily Mail this morning, again, it's Robbie Henshaw here, and Joe's full backing is the contender there for Tab of the Morning. Rory Keane writes, Henshaw will thrive in the new role, says Schmidt. It's one of the most fascinating aspects of tomorrow's game, the switch from Robbie Henshaw back to 15. And Crouch vows to seize his chance at Burnley. There's a lot of the headlines this morning on Peter Crouch's return to the Premier League. He played about 25 games for Stoke in the Championship this season. Had gone from a place, obviously, where he was getting splinters in his arse when they were in the Premier League and he couldn't get a game. So he's talking, 38-year-old, talking about how he's excited to be back in the Premier League. But I just fear that Peter Crouch at Burnley might end up doing a bit of a subs job again.
Yeah, maybe the splinters in Burnley are more pleasant than the splinters at Stoke City. And maybe he just loves the idea of playing in the Premier League. I know I certainly would. If I was 38 years old and a Premier League club was interested in me, I'd go and sit on the bench. Probably a bit more of a limelight there if you come off the bench and score one winning goal in a Premier League game. Like Burnley have likely made that signing thinking about one potential set of 3 points. It's not like a Jermaine Defoe signing for Sunderland a couple of years ago, where from January onwards he single-handedly keeps them up. Burnley are in a position at the moment where I think they're going to be safe, even though they technically have to talk to themselves into the sense that they're in a relegation battle. I can see Peter Crouch scoring a last-minute winner after playing for 5 minutes in one of the games, and that 3 points would be totally worth that move.
Where did John Walter say he was at on his injury comeback when he was with us?
Well, he's back in the training ground, obviously, because he was en route. So I think he's close to full training. Like, what you want to see is Robbie Brady back in that team, putting balls in on top of Peter Crouch's head. Jeff Hendricks, obviously, playing regularly at the moment as well, after a slight blip in terms of not being in the starting 11 before Christmas. So let's hope Peter Crouch just becomes the Republic of Ireland enabler.
Yeah. That's certainly one way of looking at it, right? The Irish Times this morning as well, it's rugby here. Schmidt backs solutions man Henshaw to make the switch. There was one interesting quote from Joe Schmidt from that piece that Jerry Thornley writes about in the Irish Times this morning, in one of the other papers, about the solutions aspect of it. He says that he really could ask Robbie Henshaw to play anywhere in the pitch. He said, if I said to him, look, Robbie, I'm thinking about putting you at number 8, he'd look a bit bemused, but he'd say, yeah, I just need to get the calls. I'll see Greg Feek and make sure I'm nailed on at scrum time. So that's the attitude that you get from At Lone People Own, I think, is the short story generally out of that one. That's Jerry Thornley looking ahead to that. Some reflections as well, that who schooled who when Aki met Tuolangi in 2007. This was in a schools match, another part of the preview there. And Jones insists that England can upset Ireland. Shock headline.
Back page of the Herald is edge of the seat. Schmidt quick to dismiss England boring Barb. So Joe Schmidt has pledged Ireland will provide edge of the seat entertainment in tomorrow's opener, despite the fact that we've been dismissed as boring by one of England's coaches. The back page of the Sun goes with, I was going to say Tab of the Morning to you, but it's a fairly straightforward pun when you're talking about Maurizio Sarri. They go with Sarri seems to be the hardest word. Bullish Blues boss won't ditch style. And the Mirror go with the exact same headline. Sarri seems to be the hardest words. Chelsea boss fears he's being ignored by his players. And you've also got that story about Robbie Henshaw starting at 15. Another Sarri pun on the back of the Irish Daily Star this morning. They go with Sarri state of affairs. Chelsea boss is feeling the pressure. You've also got Ants signs on. That could be a fairly notable moment from transfer deadline day. It wasn't a transfer, it was Anthony Martial putting pen to paper on a new 5-year deal at Old Trafford. Back of the Guardian this morning is, can you feel the power? Ice Cool Jones says England can shock the champions. You've also got a bit of cricket there in terms of the main picture. Main photo on the front of the Daily Telegraph sports section is also the cricket in Antigua, but Eddie Jones is saying, we will make the nation proud. England coach says there is no need for mind games and his street fighters can win. And the back page of the Racing Post, their rugby story is aiming high. Paris win can be catalyst for Welsh Six Nations title tilt. You've also on the front of the Racing Post, Dublin Festival timing switch in bid to beat Free. So Leopardstown has taken extra precautions to protect this weekend's Grade 1 extravaganza. Moving tomorrow's 3 chases, including Min's potential clash with Footpad in the Dublin chase, to the end of a 7-card race. So it's obviously going to be frosty conditions early days tomorrow if you're heading along to Leopardstown.
Bernard Brogan, assuming not the Bernard Brogan on YouTube here, says that if Kerry were playing in the Six Nations, I bet Owen would go.
Well, you know, he's caught me off guard there.
He could be onto something.
He's caught me off guard there. I didn't really think of that eventuality. Hopefully they'll get into it sometime.
Adrian McGrath on YouTube says the Tony Kelly decision is going to further remove physicality from hurling, giving more support to ball retention.
Yeah, I think I do think the Tony Kelly sending off on Saturday night is a fairly significant moment in terms of what we're going to see. Maybe not just this season, because change sometimes takes a while to happen in Gaelic games, but over the next couple of seasons, I think he's onto something there.
Yeah, ball retention has never really been a huge thing in hurling, though. Is the only thing.
Maybe not ball retention.
Clare brought it in 2013. They did quite a bit of that sort of short passing thing that they capped a lot of heat for, and then went on to win the All-Ireland.
Yeah, well, Don Logue and his puckouts back in the day would have technically
I've always thought that the sort of possession game in hurling, I don't understand how you so frequently give up the ball to. Sometimes, I mean, I don't know the exact percentages, but frequently it's a 50-50 ball. I mean, your man might be in a better sort of diagonal ball, slightly better position or whatever, but generally, I've just never understood it. Like, I know you can hit the ball 70 or 80 yards if you want, but actually guaranteed possession 20 yards up the pitch surely is better.
Yeah, you would say so. Like, the diagonal ball does seem to be the happy medium, and Kilkenny were employing that quite a bit last weekend in the league as well. Of course, Brian Cody doesn't do tactics, but it did seem that the corner forwards and the full forward had a certain autonomy to just drift off to the sideline, and if the sliotar happened to be on the far side of the pitch, you can expect that ball, and those diagonal balls seemed to work a treat for them last weekend. So I think that is the happy medium between ball retention on a short game basis and, you know, just pucking the ball 70 metres and see where it lands.
And it might be a bit of a mix as well. Like, it doesn't have to be sort of all one or the other. Surely if we're to be considered World Cup contenders, we must win the Grand Slam, says Darren Dohney. 5 games versus 7 with similar demands in terms of standards. And Sam Funnell sort of just utterly misrepresenting what happened earlier on by saying, so Schmidt sees Henshaw as a number 8. I think he was not quite what he was saying. It wasn't quite an Eddie Jones, Jack Noel could play 7. It's
a good point, though. I was kind of thinking about that myself, about the Grand Slam and World Cup mirror image that they are. Like, you could put down Ireland sometimes not winning a Six Nations as a grand Six Nations. Say on a year, like on the even number of years, when you have to travel to Twickenham and you have to travel to Paris. Say if you win one of those games and you lose the other one and you win the rest of your games and you come second in the Six Nations, you say to yourself, that's a good Six Nations. We didn't win it, we came second. But to win a World Cup, you need to put in a Grand Slam performance. Like, you need to win every single game, basically.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's all relative to where we're at the minute. I remember, I may be wrong with my years, it may be 2003 or 2004 when we won the first Triple Crown in God knows how many years. I have the 3 programmes at home from that.
Would have been 04. 03 England had the slam.
Yes, it was 04, yeah. And I have the 3 programmes at home that at some point I'm going to put into a frame, but that tells you what a monster deal that was at the time. Whereas now, exactly like you're saying, like a Triple Crown now would be almost seen, if we only won a Triple Crown, it would almost be seen as a failure.
Yeah, it's true. Like, winning a Triple Crown this year would probably constitute a Grand Slam, I think. I think we're going to beat France at home, and I think we're going to look after Italy. So I then think the Triple Crown is the harder part on a year like this year.
We're going to murder them. What was the slaughter them? Was what you were saying earlier on.
Of England.
all comers?
Well, potentially. I think Ireland will be licking their chops at the scent of England tomorrow.
You watch more rugby than you let on when you're using that kind of expression. There's nothing genuine about that kind of...
I never said I didn't watch loads of rugby. I do, but I just watch it from my home instead of, outdoing a genuine rugby club man.
Right, get your comments coming into us on the hashtag or on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and we shall bring them to you before we leave you, which will be just over an hour's time. We've lots of good stuff coming your way. We're going to be speaking to Mike Tyndall and Alan Quinlan on the rugby. Phil Thompson is going to be standing by to chat about the weekend's football and obviously about the Monday night game as well, where Liverpool are in action against West Ham. So that's all coming your way, and do keep your comments coming our way. Last night on Off the Ball, Kilkenny and Ballyhale Shamrocks hurler Colin Fennelly joined Nathan for a chat around his club's journey in the AIB All-Ireland Club Hurling Championships, and there's loads of that conversation. You can check out the full piece up on our website or up on our YouTube channel. But the lads also got talking about Colin's time in the army.
The Lebanon is grand.
I've heard it's like it's the best training camp in the world. That when thankfully at times when there's peace over there, that actually you're training twice a day. You come back built like a tank.
I wouldn't say no. I came back like a tank, but there's plenty of lads that come back like tanks. All right. There was nothing happening over there. You get your run in, you get your gym in during the day, and that's pretty much it.
So whereas some people maybe look at teaching as a good profession for GAA players, you just went a slightly different route. Slightly different,
yeah. No. So certainly with the army, there was a lot more leeway. So it was, and you were able to. They gave time towards sports. They emphasised a lot of the army on sports, which was obviously suited me.
And did you enjoy it? Or was it very much a means to an end?
A means to an end, to be honest. I enjoyed it only because doing so well with Kilkenny.
Right.
There wasn't much. There's no job satisfaction in it for me. I'm sure for certain lads they do, but in the army itself, there's nothing to do. It's obviously a good thing. There's nothing to do, as in army-wise. But other than that, you walk down to the locker rooms and you see lads sitting around doing nothing, because there's just nothing to do. And from things like this, like people coming out and saying there's nothing to do, and then the high lads are wondering what's going on, how come lads are doing nothing, and then they kind of force things to happen, but there's literally nothing to do.
What sort of issues? Is it just boredom?
Just boredom, absolute boredom. And and again, from this, the top lads will probably come down and say, oh, we need to do this, we need to do that, and there's actually nothing to do. It's a whole revamping needs to be done.
And what would you like to be doing? What would you? It's a conversation that probably doesn't happen very often, and you're out of it now. You can be perfectly honest.
More options, they could easily. They do trades in there in the army, and you'd like to see a lot more lads push towards doing the trades and maybe helping out in different ways. There's so many barracks there as well. They're all closed down. They could be opened up for so much more. There's so much more help to probably communities that can be done. It's not being done, and it's crazy. Just comparing to the nurses, how much work they do. And again, it's not the lads at the bottom. It's not their fault. It's not the people at the top either. They can't say, go do more hill walks and stuff. It's.
Yeah, it sounds as though you're almost creating a situation where you're encouraging laziness among very fit young men in their 20s who, as you say, if they were steered in the right direction, firstly, they can be coming out of the army with good qualifications that will serve them from then on. But also at that age, they can be using that experience in local communities, in voluntary organisations, and making use of their time.
Yeah, exactly. But I wasn't too bad. I didn't have a mortgage, I didn't have a family to pay for, and that was grand. But I can't imagine how other lads pay for it. But then you kind of see where the work is. There's nothing to do. You wonder how you can ask for more money. But certainly with lads with families and stuff they need to build their future there.
Yeah, Colin Fennelly on the show with Nathan last night. That was just a short segment of a longer chat you can check out up on our YouTube channel and on offtheball.com. The Defence Forces were in touch last night to issue a rebuttal of their own, saying, we're surprised and disappointed to hear these comments from the former member. Ugly Naharan takes pride in our members, they say. who achieve at the highest levels in sport. However, while sport is an integral aspect of our culture, it's not the only aspect. Óglaigh na hÉireann prides itself on the dedication and sacrifice that its men, women and their families make daily in defence of the state, assisting government agencies and working in multinational peacekeeping missions. We also offer unique career opportunities and specialist training for our soldiers, sailors and aircrew who wish to develop themselves personally and professionally. So that was the response of the Defence Forces yesterday, and as I said, that full piece available up on offtheball.com. And needless to say, there's been a breadth of response to that piece of Colin Fennelly yesterday, both from you and from the broader media as well, and it covers all aspects of the debate. So an interesting conversation worth checking out up on our YouTube channel. We're going to be joined a little bit later on by Mike Tyndall and Alan Quinlan. We're going to preview the weekend's rugby. There's plenty to speak about in that regard.